yeah, Kyle Dubas came in and look at, I mean, there's a lot of talk about would he be back? What does ownership want to do with him? We've heard all kinds of rumors coming out about, Pittsburgh especially. And Paul Beeston's son works for the Fenway Group that controls the Penguins now, and he and Kyle are friends, from what I understand. So, you could see when those rumors came out, yeah, there's a way to connect the dots. Then Kyle comes in yesterday and makes a statement beforehand that, he's not even sure that he will be the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs this upcoming year, not because ownership and those above him don't want him there, but because there's some things with his family and the stress that his family went through this year. And I can understand that. I mean, you could see how that, being a general manager in Toronto is different than being a general manager in other places. And I really do think, in previous seasons that they thought they had a chance. I almost think that this year, with the moves that they made, they expected to at least get to the conference final, and it took its toll. And so this is another fascinating part of this soap opera that, hey, you know what? I mean, Kyle Dubas, even if they want him back, it might be his decision to take off a year. He said he wouldn't be a GM anywhere else right now, but that the toll it took on his family, he needs to think about it and talk with them before he decides. And that's before we know what's going on with ownership, although there's reports that they have been working on an extension. But, that caught a lot of people off guard. And I'll finish it with this. I've been to a lot of Kyle's press conferences. That was as emotional a press conference as I've seen. And when he talked about his family, you could see his eyes welling up. So this is a thing. This is not an excuse. This is not a power play to get more money out of MLSE. I think this is a real thing. And hopefully by the end of the week, we know one way or the other which way it's going. But you know what? I mean, forget about Kyle Dubas, the general manager. Kyle Dubas, the person and the family man, we wish him the best no matter which way he goes.
Well, of course. I'm just puzzled by why anybody would think that the Maple Leaf management, whoever makes the decision, would bring him back. Based on what?
Well, Bob, first of all, and sorry to interrupt, but you made a great point there. Who makes those decisions, Bob?
We don't know.
Well, we do. This is going to come from the board, Bob.
Well, why do you say that? I mean, technically, isn't the president the guy who would make that decision? I mean, if you're the board and you're going to take that decision away from the president, aren't you looking for a new president?
Well, no, because
you don't trust him.
Because what you're talking about here is you're talking about, budgeted dollars. I mean, if Kyle Dubas stays, trust me, he's not going to make the same amount of money he did last year. He's going to need and want more. If he stays, and I suspect he's going to need and want more power. And that's not something Brendan will be allowed to give him arbitrarily by himself. That's going to be something he's going to have to go to the board and say, here's the outline. Here's how it works. Will you give me permission to go do this? And that's what the board will do.
John, are we sure that Brendan's going to be back?
No, we're not. We're not. And
so then who makes that decision?
Well, that's the board too. Unless Brendan is making the decision himself too, that he's had enough. I don't believe that. He's still under contract. I think he enjoys being the president of the Toronto Maple Leafs and the challenge of it because he's a competitor. But I would say this goes back to, and Bob and I touched on this yesterday a little bit, is that for the longest time since Brendan has been there, the board has been, in the shadows. When you were covering the Leafs in the early 2000s, everything was the board this, the board that, the Ontario Teachers Pension Fund this, the TD Bank that. It's different now, and that's why Brendan was hired in the first place.
I don't know what all this means. Who makes a decision? I don't care. I care what the decision is, whether it's Shanahan
and
who
what's
makes
your
the
decision
or the board. Well, I think you got to fire this general manager. Period. I mean, he seems like a very nice guy.
No, you don't fire him. You don't extend his contract. That's
whatever it is. Essentially, that's a firing. If you don't extend his contract, essentially, that is a dismissal.
Trust me, Bob. I know.
Well, you think. Sorry?
When you make decisions like that, okay, and understandably so, because he's not going to take, this isn't a player. He's not taking a 1-year bridge deal. But you better damn well have somebody in mind that you think is better to step in.
Not necessarily. I don't think that's the case. I think decisions are not necessarily made by who replaces you. The decision is made based upon the performance of that person in any job. In any job. I'm not sure that a person who makes that kind of decision, the thought process is invariably, this is the guy that can do a better job at that, because you don't know if you can get that person.
Yeah.
In a general sense.
Let me ask you this, Mike. The last few years, it's been Kyle and Brendan side by side at the table talking to the media. Yesterday, it was Kyle by himself. Is there anything to read into that?
Well, he was asked that and just said, "Look, I'm responsible for the trades. I'm responsible for what happened to the team. I don't need anybody to shield me. I'm here facing the music." The fact that Brendan didn't talk yesterday, and we've been given kind of this broad, he's going to talk later in the week. My spidey sense suggests to me that the reason he's not talking right away is because there haven't been things that have been set in stone, finalized, in terms of what he's going to tell us, that things are still in flux. And you could tell by the way that Kyle talked yesterday that there's things in flux in their personal lives. Look, I think from players to coach to general manager to president, and I will circle back on this, I really think that they're still in a state of shock. Not just because that they lost in the second round to Florida, but the way they lost, John, because, I know you don't get artistic merits from the Bulgarian judge in playoffs, okay? All that matters is wins and losses and stuff. But number one, other than game 2 in those playoffs, did we see them play anywhere near their ceiling? I'm not saying at their ceiling, anywhere near their ceiling.
No, they didn't.
It's no.
Game 2 against Tampa was the only one that they played good at.
That's exactly right, Bob. So
they were outplayed in virtually every other game.
Yeah. You're 1-5 at home.
Exactly.
So you're saying, home ice advantage, this and that. Okay. You're 1-5 at home where the coach has the last change, which theoretically should give you a bit of an advantage. Your last 7 games, Bob, you scored 2 goals a game. Okay.
Yep.
You are spending $40 million on 4 guys. Okay. And I don't want to hear the stuff about, we were getting good looks. You're not paying $40 million to 4 guys so they can get good looks. I don't care how well Bobrovsky is playing. You're paying almost half your salary cap to 4 guys to score. Period. End of story. When they don't, and when they repeatedly don't, and in the playoffs in crunch time, then you've got an issue.